probably gathered by the title that I'm not holding back about our part in violence towards sentient animals. I've seen some interesting responses to the very, very sad and not surprising issue of excess animals that cannot get to the slaughterhouses, the many slaughterhouses during this COVID-19 pandemic, that they're being killed in other ways other than the slaughterhouse, and in just as awful ways, or even more awful, if that's possible, than the slaughterhouse. And I'm not going to show any graphic images, but I've talked about this before. I've talked about how they're not going to let them go free. This is something that someone has brought up somewhere. They said, why don't they let them go free? Well, firstly, since it's economically efficient to kill animals en masse through either baking them to death, which is how they're doing it. They turn up the heat in these large windowless warehouses where animals are raised and bred. They turn up the heat and it basically bakes them to death, and that means hundreds of thousands at a time baking to death. It's a slow death, and that's the economically efficient way of doing it. Another way is to put carbon dioxide into these large warehouses for animals. And I'm talking about free range too, free range in quotes, because they're industrialized as well, tens of thousands in these large warehouses that they get maybe an hour out a day, and they might have a little bit more wingspan than, say, the battery cages or the enriched cages. They're all awful. So I'm including free range and enriched cages and all of that sort of thing in this. It's all abusive. So they put carbon dioxide into these large areas, and these animals slowly suffocate to death. Slowly, not over half a minute or something. Slowly suffocate to death over hours. So that's two of the charming ways that large industries kill animals, because it's economically efficient. When there's too many animals and they can't process them, in quotes, at these slaughterhouses, that's what they're doing right now, is suffocating to death or baking to death many millions of pigs and many millions of chickens, all sentient animals, all animals that we would consider, if we met them at a sanctuary, we'd say, isn't that animal lovely? Most people think animals morally matter. Even war criminals like Obama and Bush and Trump. So since most of us think that animals morally matter, and we probably, if we saw an individual instance of abuse towards an animal, no matter what species, most of us would want to intervene. That's probably what would happen. We would report it, possibly, if someone was kicking a pig or kicking a chicken or trying to choke an animal, or if we were hitting cats, all that sort of thing. Most of us think animals morally matter. So why is it that we can't put one and one together? When we see a headline like millions of pigs to be killed because processing plants aren't able to process them because of the COVID pandemic, why can't we put that together, that those animals wouldn't be there if we were vegan? I mean, it's not the large industries like Tyson's and Smithfields. They're not responsible really for those killings. It may be by somebody else's hand at the slaughterhouse, but they wouldn't be there if we were vegan. That's really as simple as that. And there's not going to be any nice ways that they're going to rid those animals that are in excess, that can't be processed, in quotes. There's no nice way of getting rid of them or putting them out to some pasture somewhere. Because if they cared about those animals at all, those industries, and if they didn't care about their bottom line, they didn't care about being economically efficient, then if they cared about them, then they would themselves be vegan and they wouldn't have those industries, and they would be encouraging you to be vegan if you're not vegan. If they cared about those animals at all, there wouldn't be that industry, because there is no such thing as non-abusive use of animals. And even if there were, it would still be morally wrong, because these animals are sentient. It doesn't matter that we've labeled them as food or as entertainment or as companion animals or whatever label we put on them. And however we are thinking about them right now, even though we might think the cat and dog whom we live with is fabulous and a family member, we still might have compartmentalized them and thought they are family members, but those pigs that are in those large warehouses that are being suffocated and baked to death, they're just food. They're part of our food chain. This food chain nonsense, really. How did the line blur between our love for cats and dogs and whales and all of that, and putting these animals over here as things? And that's how industry thinks of those animals too, that they're property, they're things, and it's economically efficient to process them in the most hideous ways in slaughterhouses, to raise them in the most hideous conditions. And I'm talking about even the small mom and pop farms. They separate mothers from their children, and the mother cows cry for days, and the male calves are taken off to slaughterhouses because they're no use to either that dairy industry or possibly even whatever, if they're raising them for meat. And eventually all those animals on those mom and pop farms will be killed, because if they're not productive, well, what use are they? The whole idea is to be productive. So you see, we can tell ourselves that, oh, well, I buy humanely raised meat, and therefore, I'm doing the right thing by animals and by myself. Well, that's not the case at all. Because, as I say, there's no such thing as non-abusive use of animals, and even if there were, it would still be wrong. And if we're telling ourselves that, oh, well, it's better than them being in these large confined spaces, these so-called factory farms, even though I've just mentioned that free range is industrialized and enriched cages are industrialized and all of that, we can tell ourselves, that, well, it's better than nothing. But that's not really fair, is it? It's not really fair, and it's not really morally consistent. Are a few moments of palate pleasure really worth all these millions of pigs baking to death in large warehouses? Or many millions of chickens baking to death in large warehouses? Or being suffocated to death over hours? Is it really worth it? I mean, can we keep telling ourselves that this is okay? Particularly when animal agriculture is destroying the planet. It's responsible for so much devastation of species mass extinction, the climate crisis. It's got a huge part in both those things. It's destroying the oceans. Animal agriculture is going to have to end if we're going to really evolve as a species. And the reason industrialized farming exists is because it's trying to meet the demand for animal products by the public who are not vegan. There's no other way really to meet that demand, particularly with population going to be around over 10 billion with a B, by the mid-century, if we're still around as a species by then, if the climate crisis hasn't completely devastated our species and other species. If we're still going to be around by 2050, then one of the things we have to do is stop animal agriculture, and that means you and I need to go vegan. Capitalism is just meeting demand. It's not a system that's the problem. We are the ones that create demand. We need to take that on board, that it's not corporations that are the problem. It's not capitalism. It's not socialism. It's not communism. All those systems still involve using animals, but guess who is the driver of that? We are. So I'd like to think that people will look at what we're doing to these animals, whether it's killing them because of this COVID-19 pandemic, or whether it's just the normal runnings of these slaughterhouses and the normal runnings of how we raise animals for food and clothing, etc. It would be great if we could all just think about that. And when we sit down to eat, look at our plates and think, every animal product on that plate was once a sentient animal who loved life just like we do and did not want to die. They did not want their children taken from them. They did not want to be mutilated and tortured. They wanted to live just like we do. They wanted to be free, and they didn't want to be bred into existence by the billions. Imagine that. This is legal slavery in the 21st century. And I'm going to share a piece with you soon, which is from UVE Archives, and it's called Legal Slavery in this 21st Century, and it was written by, co-written. One of the writers is Angel Flynn from Gentle World. I'm going to share that with you, and I think we have to confront it and stop putting animals in a separate compartment because they happen to be another species. I often mention that racism, sexism, heterosexism, speciesism, classism, all of that are all faces of the same ignorance. They all otherize a group based on an irrelevant criterion. And in the case of animals, it's species. They all cause violence, and where you have one form, you'll have all forms. And also, if we have speciesism, we'll always have war. As Tolstoy said, where there are slaughterhouses, there will be battlefields. I think that's the quote. So, it's no small thing, the importance of being vegan. It's not a small thing. And if people think it's irrelevant and it's something that you can do later and it's over here, it's a personal choice. I've talked about personal choice before. That's a nonsense. It ceases to be a personal choice when there's hundreds of billions, trillions really, of aquatic and land animals are tortured and killed every year for trivial reasons of mostly palate pleasure. Since we don't need animal products at all to survive, we can easily meet all our nutrition requirements from plants and other non-animal sources. So the only reason all of this tremendous violence, the terrible violence to every single one of those sentient animals, is because we think they taste good. And meanwhile, we're destroying the planet and causing massive greenhouse gases and all sorts of devastation, waste, pollution in the rivers, dead zones in the oceans, destroying the oceans. Check out Seaspiracy on Instagram, and check out Cowspiracy, the sustainability secret. We have to get our heads around this, folks. We can't keep making excuses anymore. We've got to stop making excuses. We're grown-ups, we're adults, we can accept a truth, can't we? And veganism is a truth. It's an ethical position which rejects using sentient animals as resources. We have to get our heads around it, and stop pretending like it's okay what we're doing to them, because it's not. It's not okay. It was never okay, and it's not okay now. And if ever there was a time to go vegan and stay vegan, it's right now, because there are so many, there's a list as long as my arm of things that are good about being vegan and good for the planet, for sentient animals, and our health. There's a long list of things. It's hard for me to be aware of the fact that there's millions and millions of pigs suffocating to death, probably right now, or being baked to death, or millions of chickens. This includes little piglets too. Piglets that we fetishize in, books, Babe, movies like Babe, and nursery rhymes we read to children. Suffocating or being baked to death. But if they live they still live a torturous existence, and they'll just replace all those animals that have been knocked off like that. And those animals will then suffer through the awfulness of being confined, tortured and mutilated, dying of diseases. They don't care if animals are dying of diseases, and they pump these animals full of antibiotics prophylactically, which cause superbugs. They'll probably cause future pandemics. There's all sorts of viruses come up in these, because these animals are stressed and they get sick. It's just not good enough. Even if it's a selfish reason, even for our own survival, I prefer people go vegan for the right reasons, because non-human animals are not our resources. But even for selfish reasons, people should be really seriously thinking about it. It's really hard for me to think about those animals in general every day in these awful situations. On my walk today, I saw a cage on the back of a ute which had young lambs in them, and I'm thinking they're probably going off to the slaughterhouse. They may not be, but they're all just being carted around, or they're out in the sun, and if it's really, really hot, they're out in the sun 24/7, or at least during the daylight hours, the heat, and they only get respite during the night. There's nowhere to shade. It's just, if we left a dog out in the sun all day and it was like 35 or 39 degrees Celsius, I would imagine people would be ringing up and complaining to these useless animal welfare organizations who just support this property paradigm of animals. But I would imagine that's what would happen. People would ring up these useless animal welfare organizations saying, oh my goodness, this dog is being left out in the sun all day, no shade. And yet, this is what we do to cows and sheep, and they're left out in the sun or in the freezing cold. They freeze to death, or they suffer through dreadful heat, and some of them die, or they're put on ships, live export, and these suffocating conditions, and many of them baked to death on these death ships. And then they get to the country that they're going to, and then they throw them in the back of boots and drive off in the boiling sun. Can you imagine? Can you imagine the dog whom you live with, or the cat whom you live with, being treated like that? And then they're killed. But it doesn't matter how they're killed, really, because this is all wrong, you see? It's not about what country and how they kill them, or methods of killing, halal or kosher or whatever. It's all horrific. Slaughterhouses are horror houses. Taking someone's life is a harm. It's taking away their precious life. And for trivial reasons. You see how trivial it is. Because we don't need these animal products at all. We don't need them. They are not essential to us at all. At all. That is a huge lie, that somehow meat is essential, or dairy is essential, or eggs are something we need. All of that. It's a huge lie that we're being told. Even doctors put out this nonsense that, dairy has got calcium, that it's important for our bones. My bone density is, I've been vegan for 15 years, my bone density, I had it tested recently, it's higher than average. I don't drink dairy. I just have a balanced plant-based diet, nutritionally balanced, that's all. Leafy greens, beans, legumes and grains, And it's so delicious. There's like tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of recipes online. Plant-based recipes. Hundreds of thousands. And they're simple too. And if you want alternatives, these faux meats and faux dairy and cheese and all of that, they exist more and more too. If you need that, they're not healthy for us, but if you need that kind of thing as a transition or whatever, they exist. So why are we doing all of this? You know what I'm saying? Why are we doing all of this to these sentient animals? breeding them into existence by the hundreds of billions, destroying everything, taking up massive amounts of land, polluting, all of that for nothing really, nothing that we need. We don't need it. These little animals are just like any other sentient animal whom we have fetishized. They're no less important than dogs and whales and cats and tigers and lions. They're no less important. They are morally equivalent to all those animals. We have to stop otherizing sentient animals. They're on this planet with us. They're fellow beings with us, fellow earthlings, and we have no rights to be dominating in this human supremacist abomination that we've created on this planet. This is why we're on the edge of extinction, because we don't even know how to treat one another. We don't even know how to treat each other well. Human beings. We're dominating and exploiting human beings on this planet and killing them so that we invade their countries and take them over. Western imperialism is absolutely run amok right now. US empire is out of control, a rogue state. This is what we're doing as humans to one another. Is it any surprise with the way we've treated animals? 99.99% of the planet's population, we're exploiting and killing them. Is it any surprise that we're doing it now, and we've been doing it all along to our own species? Anybody who's vulnerable or different. You know, is there any wonder? I don't like living on a planet like this. I do not. And I was a part of that too. I was a part of that exploitation of animals. I saw them as they were here for us. They were here for us to use. It wasn't even a conscious thought. It was just something that was so ingrained right from day one on this planet, for me and for all the other people on this planet. Day one, you're indoctrinated to believe that. But I was a part of that, and I've probably been responsible for at least 4,000 non-human animals' deaths or more. Dairy cows and calves are killed. And they have a very, very, very torturous existence too. More so even than beef animals, beef cows. So I'm responsible for many, many deaths of sentient animals. Just being alive, of course, you know, you can be responsible for, because animal use is so pervasive. Animal products are in the chairs and the computers and glue and furniture and all sorts of things. It's impossible right now to avoid some sort of animal use. It's in the roads, it's in computers, animal products. But we can do something right now to address the massive, very obvious animal use. Very obvious. And we can't call ourselves we can't say we're true greenies or true environmentalists if we're eating animal products. We cannot say that. So everybody wringing their hands over these animals being killed the way they are, these pigs and chickens being suffocated or baked to death by the millions during this pandemic. If you're wringing your hands about that and you're not vegan, please consider going vegan. If you're wringing your hands and frightened about the imminent human extinction because of climate emergency, the climate crisis, then if you're not vegan, please go vegan. If you're distraught about what's happening in the oceans with dolphins and whales being killed by the hundreds of thousands, caught up in large trawler nets with these super trawlers, and in general, they're often pulled up in these nets and they die. They're tossed overboard. Or the 130 million sharks that are killed every year, either for certain products or because they're just caught up in nets and they're thrown overboard, or they're just bycatch, basically. They call it bycatch. Or turtles. There's a whole many species that we fetishize that are caught up in nets. And why are there these huge super trawlers? because we are not vegan and we're creating demand, a huge demand for these animal products. That's why they exist, the huge super trawlers. People go, ban those super trawlers, get rid of them. That's sort of silly, because while there's this huge demand for animal products, that's the most economically efficient way of meeting that demand for those aquatic animals. It's the most efficient way. Isn't that awful? And there's 4 million or more trawlers going around the oceans every single day. 4 million. Scooping it all up. They're saying, the scientists are saying there won't be any more fish in the ocean by 2048. That's 28 years from now. I think it's going to be sooner than that, because the oceans are warming up and a lot of animals in the oceans can't cope with it. And there's crustaceans that their shells are dissolving because of the acidification of the oceans. Shells are dissolving. So it's not. It's really out there what we're doing right now if we're not vegan. The tremendous violence and injustice. So please go vegan. I hope that I've conveyed what's wrong with promoting this idea that it's a personal choice, or promoting this idea that it's all I have to do is, buy these animal products from these small farms, and that makes it okay. By the way, these small farms are in some ways producing even more problems for the environment than these large ones in relation to the climate crisis and greenhouse gases, etc. The amount of land that they're using and all of that. And they will never ever be able to meet the demand for animal products. So, you might be buying your animal products from a small farm, but everybody can't do that. And there's still lots of violence in relation to that small farm. But everybody can't have a small farm. That's not possible with the amount of people on the planet. And as that show On Contact with Chris Hedges, it was called The Looming Food Crisis. It says that animal products will not be able to feed the planet by 2050. So we have to abandon it. We have to abandon animal agriculture. It cannot feed a 10 billion population. Okay, so that's all I wanted to say. So thanks for watching. My name's Trish Roberts. You're watching Fancy Signals from Vega. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Click the notifications bell, otherwise you won't receive notifications when I drop a video. Thanks so much for watching. Please go vegan. Check out howtogovegan.org. That's my comprehensive vegan resource in podcast form. Till next time, bye for now.